Ever tried reading while jogging, cooking, or even juggling flaming torches? Yeah, it doesn't end well. But with audiobooks.com, you can conquer books without the circus act. Dive into over 450,000 titles, including more than 10,000 free ones. Get hooked on a bestseller, find your next obsession, or finally read that classic you've been avoiding since high school. And here's the inside scoop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial and snag your first 3 audiobooks on the house. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcast free today. That's audiobooks.com/podcast FREE.
Yes. Before we get started, I just want to thank all you listeners for keeping the show going and growing. Please, wherever you listen, do me a favor. This content is free, so just repay me by leaving likes, subscribing, sharing the show with people. Let's keep it getting bigger and bigger. So, wherever you listen to it, leave a review, leave likes or stars or whatever it is, or write up a review. I know on Apple you can write up a review, and share the show with people who you think might be interested. Even if you think they might not be interested, you'd be surprised at how many people end up becoming interested. All right. So share it. Thank you. Definitely want to give a big mega double shout out to the Patreon subscribers. And if you want to be more supportive of the show, check out patreon.com/bigtruth. There's different levels of patronage there that all come with their own exclusive benefits and whatnot. So check it out, patreon.com/bigtruth. If you are in the world of motorcycles or you want some new fresh gear, check out chopahead.com, CHOPPAHEAD.com. Yeah, that's my brick and mortar motorcycle shop out of Freetown, Massachusetts. We're a full service shop. Whether you want an oil change or a full custom bike built, we'll handle you. We also have parts and all that stuff, and a whole online store where you can check out swag and whatnot. So check it out, chopahead.com. And last but not least, for more information on the podcast here, check out bigtruthpodcast.com. And without further ado, we're going to get right into tonight's episode. It's a wild one. This guy, Tony, has a mind-blowing story. So get ready, get prepared, put your thinking cap on, and, you don't listen to this one lightly. So check it out.
Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Yes, we have liftoff. I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Big Truth Podcast. It's episode 112, and I have a special guest with me today, Tony Rodrigues, who is an author, and he does a whole host of things around several topics that we're going to get into tonight. So just, he's got a fascinating and mind-blowing and interesting story and background, and that leads into the work that he's doing today. So without further ado, I want to introduce Tony. Tony, how you doing, bud?
Hey, I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, man. I know you got a lot going on, and you have another meeting to get to later. So why don't we just jump right into it? For our listeners who might not be familiar with your background and your story, it involves there's a lot to it. It's a very textured story that involves a lot of kind of things that our people consider to be fringe things, like topics like Illuminati or satanic cults or secret space programs, mind control programs, alien abduction, things like that. So
we're all wrapped into one.
Just horrific story, man. You know what I mean? For one person to kind of go through and live through. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, but yeah, I don't know. Why don't we just start from the beginning for listeners that might not be familiar with your background? Why don't we just, get into it from the beginning? Like what happened to you? And then, down the road, then after we'll talk about like how you came to remember all this and the work you're doing now. But why don't we just start from the beginning?
Sure. I almost feel bad when I'm telling this in front of people that have never heard anything like it before, and because I know their first reaction is going to be, outright skepticism, like, yeah, right, this guy's crazy. But in the years since I recovered my memories, and I'll get to the story later, but I've done nothing but drum up evidence. Everything that I've gone to check out, I went to places that I remembered, hoping that it wasn't true, that I would get, something that would give me another reason to think that I remember the things I do, another sane reason. But the fact is, the way I remember it keeps checking out, and there's a lot of tangible evidence around what I've remembered. So, long story,
and so
long
those
story
things,
as short as I can get.
But not to, before you jump into that. So the things that you remembered weren't things that you would have known, right? Because they involve places that,
That's right. And I've documented it. Like I remember living a life of basically 20 years. I was abducted. So I had an ET abduction experience, and I lived for 20 years in black government programs, and eventually sold off into the secret space program, the infrastructure off-world that our government has. And not only it's not really our government, it's more like the corporations that supply our government with technology. They have colonies off-world throughout our solar system: Mars, the Moon, Ceres, around Jupiter, Ganymede. There are many places in our solar system that are already colonized that have some form of human presence on it. It's just all secret. It's in these projects. I was in 1982. I went to school with a kid who said, my dad's an Illuminati. What's your dad do? We didn't get along at all. And his dad came in and judged the science fair projects, and he pointed me out to his dad. And that was a Wednesday. The following day, Thursday night, I believe it was April 15th, 1982. I had a UFO outside, and I had gray ETs and a reptilian ET in my room, and they picked me up and carried me off.
Now, and but before we get into that, like, I don't want to just poo-poo over the Illuminati, like, a piece here. And for anyone who's listening, who's going to, like, huff and puff and, like you said, like, be like, this guy's, like,
it'd be weird if you didn't. It'd be weird if you didn't.
But listen, this is his testimony, his experiences, and don't go through life doubting anything. How do you know? You know what I mean? No, you don't know. So listen to it with an open mind. But I know I remember hearing something before, a little bit more about the Illuminati piece with that kid that involved a little bit of psychic stuff. Can you give me a little more background and why that kid didn't like you, and then kind of like what happened from there?
Well, I was in the talent back then, and they still have this program here and there around the United States, but back then I was in Willis, Michigan, was where I was growing up, just south of Ypsilanti, Michigan, southern Michigan. And kid came to school, and we had something called the Talented and Gifted program, the TAG program. So the kids with the top 5% of the school in grades qualified for these classes that were every Wednesday in the library, and it was like, higher learning stuff, how to index and how to look up things on your own. It's like just advanced learning. It wasn't super special, but this kid was in that class. And one day, so we had to leave we went to school in the morning normally, and the teacher would say, it's time for you to go to your class. And I would walk up to the library, and the other kids were there. So I got there early, and he was there with a few other girls, and they were sitting in the library on the couches, and they were all laughing. And so I walked up to see what happened. And they said, one girl said, do Tony, do him. And I was like, what are you guys doing? They said, he can read your mind. And I said, of course I didn't believe that. I was like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. And they're like, no, do Tony. He can tell what you're thinking. And so I thought to myself, the meanest thing I could think about to that kid, because we didn't really get along. I was kind of jealous of him. He was smarter than me. He had better grades and all of it. He was a very smart, freakishly smart kid.
What grade was this? So, like, how old were you guys?
Fourth grade. I was 10 years old. Okay. So I was between 81 and 82. I was 9 and 10 years old, and it was April. So April, May. So yeah. I was 10. So I looked at him and I said, go ahead and do me. And in my mind, I thought to myself, you are the ugliest kid I've ever seen. And none of these girls, when they grow up, would ever date you. And the look on his face was, he said nothing. They said, what's he thinking? And he just looked at me. And he had this horrible look on his face. And so I didn't think anything of it. I was like, whatever, he can't read minds. And then the teacher came in and that was that. But after that, he hated me. I mean, I tried to, later on, I tried to be friends or crack a joke near him, and he just wasn't having it. He hated me after that.
Yeah.
And, but so I can conclude that he did remember that, he did see that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You pissed him off, and he wouldn't even say what you had thought if you know what I mean. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was real. Like, I didn't think that he would be in, I didn't think he had the ability to read my mind.
Sure.
So, but that's the way it unfolded. And then later on that year, this is towards the beginning of the school year. Later on in April was the science fair, I believe. And so yeah, I woke up. It was a Thursday night, middle of the night, and I woke up with a gray ET in my room. And a couple of smaller reptilians came from the foot of my bed and grabbed me and carried me off. I was paralyzed.
And you think that was because of something? Because you had mentioned earlier something about something to do with his father.
His dad came in to judge the science fair.
Yeah.
And he pointed me out and said, Dad, that's that boy I told you about that ruined my confidence. And they talked about me. It was weird what they said. They said, we'll add him to something. And, they had a conversation about me basically in front of me, as if I wasn't there. And he said, no, he doesn't deserve that. And his dad said, you have to learn how to manage your resources. Or he said something to that effect.
Sure. And
it was the following day that I had Grace take me. And I was taken, and
what was that like? It was in the night. Like, were you like paralyzed, or like how did that abduction kind of occur?
We had the old phone. I lived in an old farmhouse, and we had the old ringer phone, like back in the day when you had the 30-foot cord, that curled up cord, so you could go in the other room and talk. We had one of those phones. It was our only phone in the house downstairs, and it started ringing in the middle of the night. Like, it would just, back then the phones didn't not ring. It would ring as long as somebody was calling. They didn't have a lot of the features we're used to now.
Sure, yeah.
So it started ringing, and it wouldn't stop, and my mom would always get up and answer the phone in the middle of the night, and she didn't. And I just kept feeling the urge to go back to sleep. And then it quit ringing. And there were bright lights outside that, like, the outside lit up. There was a bright light above the house, and the phone to ring again. And then there was a bright blue orb that flew in, like a crackling orb that flew in my room. And then it flew out and down. There was I giggled when it came up to me, and there was some kind of interaction. I giggled to it, and then it went out, and then I went back to sleep. And then I woke up, and it was dark. And there was a figure standing over me, and it looked like a mask. It looked like a gray ET. It looked like, by our standards, like, I don't want to say grotesque, but it looked, it wasn't human, and it was behaving like a human. And I thought it was my dad pulling a joke on me, because my dad was big on practical jokes. And I reached up. I said, Dad, take off that mask. You're not funny. And I touched it. I touched his face, and it was cold and almost wet with big pores, it's hard to describe, but it wasn't like human skin. And I went to scream, and I was frozen. It froze me. And I could move my eyes around, but that was it. I couldn't, I was paralyzed. And at the foot of my bed, 2 or 3 others walked around they were short reptilians. They were reptile looking men.
So it wasn't the same as the other one?
No, they were definitely a completely different species. Yeah. And picked me up and carried me out to the end of my bed, and there was a flash of light, and I woke up naked on a hospital, on a stainless steel table, and they were poking me with stuff, they were poking me, and they had to run tests, and there was a reptilian there that communicated with me, and it was in my head, and I was scared at first. I said, "Am I okay? You guys gonna hurt me? Are you gonna eat me or something?" And he said, no, you're safe. This is okay. Everything's fine. And, they put, and I was excited. I said, I knew you guys were real. I knew ETs were real. I knew it. And I was thrilled. And he asked me, he said they wanted my help. They wanted me to help them, and they were going to borrow my consciousness for 20 years. That's exactly what he said. And I said, no, I can't be gone for 20 years. I have a family, my mom and my family. I can't be gone. He said, no, we have time travel. We're going to bring you back. It'll be tomorrow. You're very lucky. You were only going to live so many years until you die, but now you get an extra 20 years of life. That's literally the most valuable thing. So this is a blessing. He was like, this is, I said, well, what am I going to be doing? And he said, whatever, we'll find out whatever job is best for you, and that's what you'll be doing. And I thought it was first contact. I thought that the ATs had just landed and they were taking us. And like when I was going to wake up the next morning, it would be on the news, and it was like, the world was going to have a disclosure. It was going to be the way it should be. As a kid, that's what I was thinking.
Sure.
And so I agreed, and they laid me down and they gave me some kind of medical procedure.
Yeah, and they were selling it to you as this is going to be great. Like they were spinning all the positives of it, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, how many people, if you said, look, you're going to have a job, you're not going to get paid, but you're going to live 20 more years, and you're going to be on a spaceship, you're going to be able to fly in space, and we'll bring you back tomorrow. You won't miss a day. Like, how many people would say no to that?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So I did, and they gave me a procedure, and I went under, and I woke up in Kern, California, in one of the offshoots, like a hidden version of the Project Grill Flame. And I've dug up a lot of information around that project and what they were doing. And it went from remote viewing of the Army INSCOM remote viewing research into psychoenergetics research. So they had us kids. They believed he told us we were clones. I had no memory of where I came from, what happened. I woke up with complete amnesia. That was my first stop on the 20 years. And he put us through basically your standard MK Ultra trauma-based mind control program, mixed in with both remote viewing and psychic experiments that they were running on us. They were having us go out of body. They were having us remote view things. They were having us find targets and trying to control everything, every aspect about it. But they were torturing us too and making us watch the same movie over and over, like subliminal programming movies that have cartoons and then terrible things like, animals being butchered or scenes of war of people getting butchered. And then it would go back to like Disney cartoons, and it played over and over again. And they gave us drugs, and that was in the beginning of it. And then they started, sorry, it's been a while since I had talked about all this.
Sure.
They started giving us sleep deprivation. And after that, I kind of lost all track of time. But looking back on it, with everything that I remember that I've been able to piece together, it was basically from April of 82 to December of 82. And then I was was privately owned, and I went to my owner's house in Seattle. I was shipped there through an underground train or near there. And then his wife picked me up and drove me to Seattle. So, and then they flew me off to Peru.
Before you get into Seattle or going to Peru, like, what do you think if you woke up with amnesia, like, what do you think that 4 months of torture was for? Was that to just kind of break you down, or was that to make sure you weren't going to remember things, or like?
It was programming. We were totally programmed after that. At the end of that course, for the rest of my 20 years there, they would shock me. They would regularly shock me with stuff. In fact, later on in space, in the colonies, at the Ceres Colony Corporation, I had a shock collar. And if I would get an electric shock, they shocked us so often during that training, and then programmed us after. They would come in the middle of the night and wake us up after we were sleeping, make us stand at the edge of our bed, and then they'd come by and hit us with a shock, with a cattle prod, or sometimes they'd just hit us. And then they'd let us go back to sleep, and then a buzzer would go off 15 or 20 minutes later, and they'd do it again. It went all night long. That was the sleep deprivation. And after that, I kind of lost, lost my bearings on what was going on. And when all that was done, then they started with the psychic programming. But what happened was, forever after that, if they shocked me, I would stop whatever I was doing and go into like a catatonic state, and then await command, and I would do what I was told, no matter what it was. So if I was throwing a fit or just minding my own business and somebody hit me with the shock collar, I would go into like a hypnotized state, and then I was like impressionable, I would do exactly what I was told. So that's what the programming instilled, probably among a host of other things. I mean,
sure.
Like I said, there's a lot of it I don't remember because after a few days of not sleeping, I totally don't remember what was going on. It's like always being asleep.
Yeah.
So kind of lost where I was there, but
oh no,
after
you were
that,
talking about you. Then they shipped you to Seattle.
To Seattle for about a week, and then he had his own plane, and he flew me to a place called Puerto Tawantinsuyo, Peru, in the jungles, like a river town in the Madre de Dios area of Peru. And they dropped me off, and the people there was only one guy that spoke English, and he ended up being stuck with me, like my handler. And they were shipping cocaine paste from there. This is in '83, so I got there right after New Year's in '83, and they were bringing cocaine paste, or like the I don't know the process, to be honest, but like a part of the cocaine process, they were bringing it on the river, and they would bring a little bit at a time. And when they had a plane load once a month or so, then they would fly a plane and ship it to Santa Marta, Colombia. And they lost one of the planes. The plane before me crashed, and they lost it. They never found it, so they had to pay for me to be on the plane, and they would give me an IV and then drug me, and I would go to like near death, like have a near death experience while I was under. But he said that other people would talk through me, and they were getting info like what the weather was like, if they're off course, if the police were there waiting, or all of it. I was like an early warning system for them, and we would take off and head across the state of Acre. And right when we got into Colombia, he would give me the drug, and I would lose consciousness, and I would wake up on the runway when we were offloading, when they were offloading the stuff in Santa Marta. So I was out for 4 or 5 hours. Then we fly back, and that was it. I lived in a little shack, and by the end of I was there two rainy seasons, so 2 years. And by the end of the time, he had a clipboard with questions from everybody in the village that they were going to ask me. Like he was selling whatever, like a psychic service for that. And so it got to the point where I just wasn't good at it. I was getting sicker and sicker every time they put me under, and I was going through puberty. And so they shipped me back to Seattle, and I lived there for another 2 years, 2 summers in Seattle, one of the islands near Seattle, for that billionaire. And we were being used. He was throwing political parties for political fundraisers for local politics. And he would have people would come to the property, and it was like a picnic. They'd pay. It was a fundraiser. But then at night they'd leave, and there'd only be 100 people there, and they were raping us. There was myself and six or so other boys, and they would come and go. The boys would leave, and it was like a foster care home, a big house on a big private property that was fenced in. It had a wall and a gate, and we were being used as sex slaves at that point. We were being, and they were military people that were coming by and getting us and taking the boys away to other parties. And I was there until, I want to say 85, 86. It was 86. We got up every morning and did calisthenics, and they kept us starving, so we'd be skinny, low body fat. We had to do calisthenics every morning, and they gave us a little cup of pills that to take, and they changed the pills one day, and I got sick from them. Like I'm naturally very allergic to codeine and some other things, and that's what was happening. They gave us these pills, and I started getting sick, and I said, "Can't we just go back to the old ones?" She said, "Nope. If you can't handle these, they're going to sell you to the military." That was the exact verbiage. You're going to be sold to the military. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, that's it. She took me and drove me to behind a big store, like a shopping center store, by the garbage dumpsters. And there were 2 guys in a big box van there, and they injected me with something. And I was put out, they knocked out, and I woke up on a craft on a way to the back of the moon. That was where it was like, it looked just like an airplane on the inside, only it was like super wide. Like airplanes have maybe 12 12 seats wide at the big ones. I mean, this one had 20, 30 seats wide in a row. And we could see the wall would turn into a window, and you could see we were actually flying to the backside of the moon and into a base. And there was a guy next to me that was in formal military dress with a hat and everything. And he said, "You're going to be good for me, right? I'm your chaperone." He's like, "You're my responsibility. Right there's a bag if you need to throw up." And they took us there, and it was another round of the same. The base there was both humans and gray ETs, and I got another round of programming, less painful than, and then I got a round of surgeries too. Like I had all kinds. They kept taking me and performing surgery on me, and not telling me what was going on. So I was getting operated on every day for a while, for a substantial amount of time, a week or two. And then being programmed to not have fight or flight response, to just give up my life. They were programming me to be like a suicide bomber. And they tested us and then put us on another ship and flew us to Mars. So that's where the next stop. So for people listening that never heard any of this before, I feel your pain. I know it's got to be hard to live, hard to swallow, but we're not even talking about any of the evidences that I've been able to put together, which is quite a bit since then.
Yeah, well, let's get through the story and then talk about some of the evidence stuff, for sure.
Well, I mean, real quick, without detailing everything, and there's a lot of it in my book, I went to Mars, and there are indigenous beings that live on Mars, like large insects, large insectoids, and they were territorial, and they took me when we landed. They put bags over our heads and put us on a smaller ship and flew us to a forward base. Everything on Mars is underground. A large city there, and then there was a forward base that's like the size of a school, maybe underground, five levels underground. And when I got out there, that's where I was stationed, and it was a base that was the size it could fit like 200 people. But there were only 50 there because it had been overrun at some point and was close to a contested area by the insectoids. So they were running an experimental program to try to have minimally trained and minimally equipped support soldiers for the soldiers that they did have. They were trying to match the numbers of the bugs. The bugs just could have numbers, so they wanted to have more people around. And we actually hiked on the surface of Mars. We went out hiking, and after three trips out, we were engaged, and we lost a couple of the guys, got killed by those bugs, and so they canceled the program. And I'm skipping a lot right here on the Mars thing, of course, but they canceled the program, and we sat around for the better part of 4 weeks, maybe about a month, where we did nothing. We just sat there. And myself and 12 other guys that were like me in the same program. And then they flew us, a ship came and got us and flew us to a bigger city, an underground city, which I believe was called Ares Prime. And it was a big dome. They were domes that were under the dirt. You could see through, you could see the dirt on the other side of them, but they were underground. And on the inside, they looked like shopping malls. They were very, very fancy and very modern architecture. And they took me there and plugged me into a school, like a form of school. It was a computer. And I would go to school every day, and it assessed me to see what job I was good for. And then it trained me. I ended up in skilled labor as ship maintenance. And I got trained, and that was maybe, I really don't have a good idea of how long that took, maybe 6 months, maybe 3 months. And then they shipped me off to Ceres Colony, a place called Ceres Colony. And so that's a dwarf planet that's in between Mars and the asteroid belt in our solar system. CERES, for people who don't know. And I got off, and that's 250,000 people living inside of that dwarf planet, all underground, cities and villages underground, all connected by train.
And when you say all the people that are living there, are they people from the Earth that have moved there, or is it like other
Originally,
races?
yes, Originally, there were two other races of ETs that lived there with them, taller races, not so many of them there. And then humans from Earth, they were Europeans. So they were basically Deutsch. They identified as the Deutsch culture, the Germans. And the architecture there were plenty of places, towns that were very old already, that were probably 50, 60, 70 years old. There was rust and wear on the architecture. So they were old buildings built in these big caverns. But I was there and I did ship maintenance. I was on what was an old submarine, or two submarines, I think, put together and converted into a spaceship. And myself and two other guys we did maintenance. I couldn't even tell we were moving. There were no windows to look out of, and I would take a train. I would get up in the morning. I lived in a barracks with thousands of other guys. It was looked like a prison, but we could come and go as we wanted as long as we made it to work the next day. And I'd wake up and shower and get dressed, like a assembly line situation, and get breakfast. And then trains would take us. Trains took most of the guys to the mines. They were mining out places to build new property there. Most of the labor there was doing that. And he would take me to the hangar, straight to my ship, and I would walk down the umbilical into the bottom deck of the ship with the two other guys, and they'd shut the door. And you couldn't tell if the ship was moving or not. We were flying in space, but I had no, at that point, I had no knowledge of where we were or what we were doing. But and a computer would tell us what to do. There was a screen that would say, I had a number, say you number so-and-so, go here and grab these tools and return. Now go to this junction and pull the cover off and return. And you would make all these trips back and forth and do the maintenance. That ship got old and got decommissioned. Best I can figure, I was on that ship for about 8 years, 7 or 8 years. That was my job, and it was like Groundhog Day. And then I was promoted to cargo engineer on a newer ship, and I actually got to sit in on mission briefings and look out the window and have an idea. And we went all over the place. I was in charge of counting cargo and seeing how much room we had available for new cargo. That was my job, was generating that report. And we went all over the galaxy. We went to nearby galaxies. There are natural phenomena in space that could allow our ship to go to other galaxies and return in the same day. And we would leave in the morning, we'd come back at the same time. And so they had a shorter day on Ceres, I think 20 or 21 hours. But because of the flight time, and then we'd leave at 7 in the morning, we'd be back at 7 in the morning. And because of that, I would have extra time to work around in the barracks area. And, the days went longer, so that it all works out at the end. Like, I know I'm going to lose you guys. Talking about time travel is terrible. And a lot of people are thinking, well, where were your parents at with this? And here's the punchline, is that when it was all over, when I'd been there, gone exactly 20 years, they flew me back to the backside of the moon, and they put me through the mind wiping process through many different stops, and then put me through re-aged me or reverse-aged me or put me back in my original body. I really don't know what they did, but I was back to being a 10-year-old boy. And then I woke up the next morning, Friday morning, April 16th, 1982. I woke up the next morning, but I felt like I had been gone for 20 years. I didn't recognize my toys, my mom. I ran downstairs and hugged my mom. It was like being gone for 20 years, but I didn't have those memories. Those memories were erased. A couple of weeks after that, I remembered the first 30 minutes, the initial abduction. I always remembered that. And it wasn't until 2015 I got an MRI scan in my head. I was having headaches, and they gave me an MRI scan. And about 10 days after that, I saw the Randy Kramer interview where he explained how they can take people in a time dilation for 20 years and put them back. And I went, oh my God, that's what happened. Because I had all these memories, little bits and pieces of memories of being out there that didn't make sense. It wasn't a dream. It was a memory, but it also was a long time. And I thought, when could that have happened? There's no way I could have been gone long enough to have a career. And when he explained that they take you for 20 years and put you back, they put it in, kind of layman's terms. I went, oh my God, that's what they did. And I accepted it. And then all the memories kind of came pouring back. So since then, I've gone to the house in Seattle. It exists. So imagine waking up with memories of living in a town that you've never been, and having intimate memories of where the town is, what the store is, where the ice cream is on the shelf in the store, and going there, and it's all exactly how you remember it. That's what happened to me. So I've been there. I've been to Seattle. I've been to the Inukurn place where I woke up, where they had the 3D printed, 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 3 the trauma-based mind control, and I found the funding and the paperwork around the people involved with that. I found a lot of people, and a few people have contacted me. I've done episodes in Peru, in South America, and they've confirmed some things I've said about the town in Peru, like when the Plaza de Armas got built. The other thing I said was we flew over the Okator crater. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay. We flew over the Okator crater probably 1996 or 98, somewhere in there, on the ship I was on. And there was a geyser going off, and the white deposits were salt. And I said, we had a conversation about it. In 2016, when the Dawn probe was getting to Ceres, the Dawn probe, if you look on NASA's website, everybody was speculating the white spots on Ceres were cities. And when they got close and they showed it, I said, no, that's salt. There's a geyser there that it shoots up. It's like ocean water, and it shoots up maybe 10 kilometers, 11 kilometers into space, and the water quickly evaporates and the salt snows back down, and it left those white deposits there. And in 2016, NASA made a high-speed pass with spectral analysis with the Dawn probe, and they said it's probably sulfur and a bunch of other minerals, not salt. And I was working with researchers at the time, and they said, look, Tony, do you want to retract your statement? You're on the record saying it's salt, and NASA is saying it's not. I said, no, if there's one thing I remember out of all of that time is that is absolutely salt. There may be some magnesium in it, but it's definitely salt deposits. And so that was in 16. In 2020, NASA had flown the Dawn probe to a lower orbit where it could get a good spectral analysis, and then they went over the data. It took time, and they concluded it was salt. They came out with it. So I was validated in that. It was August of 2020. So I called that out 4 years ahead of time. That was one.
Yeah. So what do you think's going on? Because why would NASA be running that type of program if, there's already kind of colonies there? Do you think there's kind of two separate entities going on, government type entities, where some people are in the know, some aren't?
Yeah. So everything is a cover story. What we see, our science, our NASA, all of it, we're still flying jet planes. They have anti-grav. You know what I'm saying? The military is still built of jet planes. So everything is a cover story to hide that, because once we're aware of it, we're going to want to participate. If we knew the government was going into space and interacting with ETs, we would insist on participating with that. And they would lose a lot of control over it, and it would invite ETs down here. There's a lot going on. So it's an elaborate shell game. It's like those Russian dolls where you open one and there's another one in there.
Yeah, the
secret, the compartmentalization of the secret is like that. So people in the military know about the secret military stuff, the trains, the high-speed train, and then people in the CIA know about their secret space stations that are observing the world. Like there's a secret space program that still has rocket technology. And then people in that program are aware of the other secret program on the back of the moon that has anti-grav tech, but they're not aware of what's going on in the rest of the solar system. So you get what I'm saying? It's highly compartmentalized.
Yeah.
And probably not by us. It's probably the ETs at the top that are running the whole thing anyway.
So, and just to go back to there's a lot to unpack with your story, and you said you went back to Seattle. Now, obviously you went through a couple of traumatic years there, being basically a sex slave. And I thought I heard something, was it, am I getting you confused with someone else? Was there a kind of like a satanic cult element to the Seattle story? Yeah, no, the guy in Seattle was a practicing Satanist. So I did witness ritual human sacrifice. Okay. And I witnessed they would tie us up and feed us. They had a flour that they would grind up like mortar and pestle, and they had wine to it, and they would feed it. They would make us drink it, and we would trip. And they would do a little seance around us, and they would use incense burners and put a cloud above us, and we'd see stuff in the clouds, and they'd ask us what we saw. Mm. So yeah, no, he was definitely a practicing Satanist. In fact, in the very beginning of my testimony, when I wanted researchers to believe, I said, please, you got to believe me. I know it sounds crazy, but it's real. One of them was an ex-practicing Satanist from, that was high up in the Temple of Set, I believe. And I described things from that even practicing Satanists don't know.
like at the lower levels of it, like they do a ritual that's not what the guys at the top are doing or how they're doing it. And I described that, and one of the researchers was aware of that, and it was what confirmed, my story. That researcher said, look, there's no way he could know that. There's absolutely no way he could know. There's only a handful of people that make it, and we all know each other. Everybody that has that information knows everybody that has it. And there's no way he knows what's going on in these rituals like that. And so that got me kind of to the next, to the next level where I eventually got interviews and went public with my story. So sadly, and, I'm not proud of it, but sadly that was one element of thing that panned out that was proof of my account.
Yeah. Now, when you went there in Seattle, when you went and revisited, have you confronted any of the people that, were involved, or was it just
no. So, I'm not going to poke the hornet's nest for one. I don't say that. I have the names.
Yeah.
And there are people still alive, and that's like, I have turned them over to researchers, and it's been a long road, man. It's been 8 years, or coming up on 8 years that I've, since I got my memories back that I've been talking about. I've been through it. There's been a lot that's happened.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I have shared their names with people where it matters. But I don't publicly say it because they can start suing me. B, they can send people to come and do bad things to me. So I'm not that I'm protecting the names, but I'm just not mad about it. I think it's more important for people, for your listeners. I think it's more important for them to know that this happened.
Yeah.
Rather than try to get revenge on people that I'm not going to get revenge on anyway if I try. So, and if anything, I found that when I do interviews to a new audience, a lot of people listening go, "Oh, wow," not a lot, but like a fair percentage of people go, "Wow, I think that's what happened to me." Like, people don't know about the 20 years and then waking up the next day. Like, if you think about your standard ET abduction, people tend to go, "Oh, we saw a craft, and then it was light, then I saw a being, and then I lost consciousness, so the lights were out, and then we woke up. There was missing time. It was like 2 hours later, and then I still feel weird. I don't know what's wrong with me. Something's different." But I just went on about my day. Like, you could have been took for 20 years and lived a whole life, and then they put you right back. You don't know. That's the level of technology we're talking about. Like, we need to know about this stuff to get ourselves up to speed, because I think we're not far from having a disclosure. The government's telling us about UAPs. Like, it's coming, man. The check's in the mail.
Yeah. Now, when I definitely, want to touch on that, but, when you said you were out there and, the humans that you were dealing with that was military, but also, a culture, a Deutsch culture, like when did they, like, how, like, is this like a just part of the thing where it's like people left, how long have they been out there? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean. Like, I know, like, if you go into like World War II era Germany, they were doing a lot of like weird research, or like research into like space stuff, or communicating with aliens. Is that like World War II era people that have been out there, or is it longer? Is it further back?
Well, they had their own version of history. They were very proud of their history. They really had a lot of their artwork, like on their money, were scenes from the 30-year war in Europe.
Okay.
The 30-year war was in 1600 till 1601 to 1630. Like, they were proud of that.
Yeah.
And that was their motto. We did it with horses. They believed that war was humans against an ET influence, like an extraterrestrial technology, and that they won. So they were proud of that. And that's a whole form of history that we don't know anything about,
Sure.
But I think that they were World War II era people that went up there. I think that's how old the colony was, like 1930s, was when they first got there and started building into it. So it seemed like, from what I remember, that. And then they had replica European towns, like an entire replica of a European town inside these giant caverns that they had found. Some other species had built had started building inside Ceres millions of years ago. That was the story I got. And like the door, they had a hangar door that they didn't build that opened up to the hangar system that was inside what is called a cold trap, inside a crater, inside another crater. so you couldn't see it when you flew over. And there was a big 1,000-foot tall doors that they would fly the ships in, and there was a giant hangar area, like 19 kilometers long was the hangar, and all these ships would park in little stalls, and that. But anyhow, I believe that they were, and they had a lot of that same lifestyle. So it was a military government. Like you didn't vote for who was in charge; it was the military that was the ruler of the whole colony, and it ran like that. So they had a lot of elements of the. I hate to say Nazi Germany, but they had a lot of elements of Nazi Germany that was there.
If it's the 1930s and if they're going up there from 1930s into the 40s, and that was what was going on at the time, right? Yeah.
So the other thing is that the cities there were all walking. Like they had little electric EMS vehicles and police vehicles, but everybody had to walk, and you were guaranteed to not be more than 15-minute walk from a train at any given moment from a train station. And and they were small. The train stops were super small. So it was.
So that's
when I look at it now, and I look
at European. That's a European.
Yeah. Well, that is the smart city thing. So now I look at this push for smart cities. Like that was the lifestyle. They had, there was money, and they had facial recognition systems that you would pay with. Like all that was going on. And this is in the 90s when I was living there, all through the 90s.
And did and I noticed you say you use a lot of metric system terms, and you're an American. So is that something that was like ingrained in you, like being out there? Like you
they were in the metric system exactly. Like so, I am an American. I think in imperial. Like I see things in miles and temperature and stuff. But while we were up there, it was the metric system. We were using the metric system.
Damn it, the metric system won.
Well, for them,
yeah. I'm just playing. I'm not trying to make light of anything. It's just, but so, now you've come into, we're going to get into disclosure and things like that. But like when you were out there, you came into contact with various, alien races, like where they, and you were basically out there, you were working kind of like pretty much as like a slave, right? Like you weren't getting paid, or there was no.
I did get a small paycheck after a while. Like when I was a cargo engineer, at the end of it, I got a small paycheck. It was in francs. They called them francs, but it was, $20, $30 a week. It wasn't much. It was just my position that they took a vote and said, let's pay these guys. So that way I could buy a train ticket and go and explore. Like I had time, I had a bit of freedom, and that got me out of the barracks. So I didn't have to get put to work doing laundry or something. So it was,
but when you with some of these other races, like the non-human races, like what was your interactions like with them, and in general, what are they? I don't want to say benevolent or malevolent, but is there like are they getting along, or is there like a war against humanity, or like something like that planned, or like was there anything like that you came across?
From what I remember, we look at the food chain. We think we're at the top of the food chain. Humans right now, we think that we're the smartest top of evolution on the planet. And the reality of the cosmos is that there are many other higher beings above us, or higher forms of evolution, evolved humanoids, and below us. So the ETs that we came across were people. It was that simple. They were not all the same thing. They weren't all good guys or bad guys. Like I said, I got stuck when they flew me back to the moon and put me back in my 10-year-old body. And so I spent a couple of 3 or 4 hours with a reptilian and talking to him. And he was just a normal person. It was just like anybody else. I mean, if you go to the doctor, if you go to the hospital, and then somebody, you say you get a male nurse and he walks you around, you guys are just kind of shooting your breeze about what you do. That was exactly what happened. And he had a wife and kids. He went home to his planet at the end of the day. He was in the equivalent of his 20s, of his age, which he explained was different. His planet was bigger than ours. And he had a sense of humor. He was funny, and he was a normal person. And all of the interactions are the same. Like ETs are just people, and no matter where they're at in their own evolution, they're just like us. It's the governments that are dealing with each other, or the organization, the elites that deal with each other, and that gives the perception of evil or good, for that matter. Because I really don't believe in either one. I don't believe. We have been conditioned our whole life. All of us have been conditioned to believe every story, every bit of media. It always has a good guy that's always good. He's always going to be a good guy, no matter what, and he always does good. Or the bad guy is always going to be a bad guy. There's no forgiving him. That's it. It makes for the good story. And so we're trying to graft that on to ETs. Now that we're starting to learn that they're real, now that they've disclosed how many exoplanets there are and that there's UAPs, the normie, the normal person that never thought about it before, is starting to entertain the thought. And they're going, are they good or evil? And they're not. And they're not. They're people. There's, you know what I'm saying? Like, America isn't good or evil. The people in it are not. Just what our perspective is at the time. And it was exactly the same. There were advanced ones. They did have a scale that, the Ceres colony had a scale of subhuman, human, I don't want to say superhuman or advanced human, then uberhuman, ultrahuman, metahuman. Like, they had a scale of beings that are above us. They live longer and they communicate faster. And it was all based on how many words you could speak. So we speak 150 to 250,000 words, something like that. And they were ETs that have 1 million words. They have a word for situations. And then they go into telepathy, and it's about data. The amount, like, not all telepathy is the same either. Some of the ETs can communicate only words and simple telepathic things, and some of them can communicate years of data in the blink of an eye to you. So telepathy is a different thing, and those are very highly advanced, and they look at us the same way that we look at, our pet salamander or our pets. They look at us as life forms that are like that are not as developed yet. And that's the reality of what's going on, up there. So we're not, the truth is, just like a wild deer isn't invited into your house, we're not invited up into their house either. We are not the height of evolution.
Sure. So, I know you kind of talked quickly about Mars, and you were in some kind of working in a military fashion or like a fighting fashion. Like, was that the only time there was like kind of strife or like a conflict while you were out there? Was those years you're on Mars? Like, what I'm getting at is
the ship had missions where we, I believe we were in combat. I was in cargo engineer. I was in maintenance for the one ship.
Yeah.
And I think that ship was in combat many times. They just never told us about it. I think at the very end of it, it was a combat thing.
Yeah.
And the other ship we were in, we had tense situations. We were in combat-like situations. So it's kind of the Wild West. Like, a lot of people don't want to believe that, and everybody wants to think that when you get into space, it's kumbaya. It's like all these beings are super advanced, like angels, and beings like that are out there. Races like that are out there. But the reality is that it's nature. And so the same thing that you would find in a forest or a jungle, the same, you might come across a fuzzy animal or a predator. Space is the exact same way on a larger scale. It's exactly the same.
So is there any kind of like, because you hear about these like different federations or this and that, are there any kind of like, not governing, but I guess, for lack of a better word, like governing bodies or associations of
yes,
things
tons.
going on up there?
There are tons of them. So the other thing that I think that we've been conditioned to believe, the thing that's different that I see that's different from my testimony, what I remember from everywhere else that we hear, is even people that are in the community, we only talk about stars that we have names for. Like, I was visited by ETs last night. They were Pleiadians. Yeah. I was visited they were from Arcturus. That's not the case. The ETs can go to the other side of the galaxy. So if they're a Pleiadian, they also have real estate elsewhere if they can travel space. So it's vast. 7 out of 10 stars has an Earth around it. That was the number that I remember. 7 out of 10 stars, and there's billion stars in our galaxy. So it's 4.5 billion stars, or am I saying that right? Is there 400 billion stars in 400 billion galaxies, and they're all accessible. They can fly here and fly home for lunch. It's an instantaneous form of travel. It's not like Star Wars or Star Trek where you're waiting all day to get to the next star where you're going. We're traveling. We called them bridging instead of portals or jumping. They called bridging.
Okay.
And so that's the technology to go to another star system. It's instant. So we are being visited by ETs from other galaxies. Could be any of a billion worlds in another galaxy or in neighboring galaxies, billions. So the number of species that are traveling out there is literally unimaginable, and they're all interacting. So you're always coming across new forms of, existence, new ETs. They're never gonna catalog them all or get to the bottom of it because it's so vast. And so these groups that you talked about, like the Federation, there's many of those. They band together. If you don't have a sponsor of those groups and you wander into space, you could be victimized. But if you go there and you represent an entire 10,000 worlds with military power, then they'll think twice before taking your ship or, taking you. And so these exist, but I'm saying that the reality of space, the reality of the exopolitical situation in space is much more grand than anybody really gives it thought of.
Yeah. And so what do you think the end game is now with like this kind of like increased kind of push towards disclosure? We got, congressional whistleblowers, we got, New York Times talking about things and, and kind of everything that's kind of going on now. Cause I mean, like literally we're in the thick of it. Like at the moment where we're speaking, like, we have military contractors that say, yeah, we have craft and they're not from this world. And there's all kinds of stuff going on. What do you think kind of the end game is here, or how imminent do you think disclosure is? And
I think that there's an ET plan for disclosure. I think the ETs came through and said, look, you need to disclose to these people.
Yeah.
And they're scrambling to get in front of it. I think people have been ruling the world working for an ET group for thousands of years and using limited amount of technology to stay in charge and to monopolize the world's resources. I think ETs have been plundering us all along, that our world is basically a colony. And the people that have been working alongside those ETs want to maintain their power. And so they're having one thing. And then other people that are aware of it in these programs want to have disclosure in a different way that doesn't enslave us. And for the last 6 years or so, for the last 7 years, probably, we've been seeing the bubbles come to the surface of them fighting below the surface. These people have been fighting to try to get ahead of what's going to happen. When these wars that are breaking out, the Ukraine, there are many things around the war that are probably related to a disclosure event. And we're going to see banking hiccups coming. We're seeing things happen. And so one side wants to have a disclosure and be in charge, and the other side wants to have disclosure and be in charge. And so that's kind of the holdup right now. I really believe that those whistleblowers that have come forward in the Capitol hearings and talking about UAPs, I think they've done so at their own risk. I think there's a lot of people that would still love to shut them up, and they still ponied up and did it. So I'm happy for them. Now that people don't see the UAP admission by the government for what it really is that academia has to now figure out how anti-grav works. Like, all of our professors in the colleges, they say, yeah, whatever, there's no UFOs, there's no science behind it. Well, now they have the UFOs and they're like, where is your science? And they have to get to work. So they can no longer just brush it off. These guys have been proven to be behind in what they're doing. So all the academia has to get on board with a disclosure. So it's already very big systemic changes that are forced by this. So, and we're going to have to swallow it slowly. So there's no quick disclosure either. I don't think we're going to get a disclosure. We're going to get ETs and this and that, but I'm sure it'll be a watered down version of the actual reality of what's going on.
And as someone that's been out there off the world and seeing how things operate, extraterrestrially, meaning like outside of Earth, I mean, do you think at the end, this is going to be a good thing, or is this a bad thing, or is this, because it sounds like there's a lot of corporate control out there. Is that going to be what's kind of administered here? Like, is it going to be like, hey, get with our program, or you got really no choice, or
It's absolutely a good thing. No matter. So I'm ever an optimist, and the slave labor and the human rights that are going to have to be dealt with. Those are things that are always going to work out over time, no matter what. So, like, even if the wrong political system discloses and takes over the world, it's only a matter of time until it shakes out and becomes the right political system. Time has a way of fixing things that are very, very wrong. So I'm an optimist in that regard. I don't really care who's in charge. It'll work out eventually. But for the everyday person, like, most people are unaware of how much we've been robbed. We get robbed by the system, by the elites that are, and they're enjoying space travel. They're up there already. The elites that around the world, there are people among us that have access to space with this technology. So the health will be, the medical science will be advanced, the knowledge, spiritual knowledge will be advanced. We'll be able to expand into the next level of our own evolution, and we can't do that without space, because that's really what we are as part of a big community. It's like it's going to have the same effect as somebody that was abused and locked in their basement, never saw the day of light in the neighborhood, a kid that grew up for many years and then all of a sudden let out to be free. Like that, it's going to be that kind of effect on us. We don't realize it, but we've been held prisoner for thousands of years from space while it all happens around us. So that's going to be the effect on society. We're finally going to be let free. And we don't have to go to space. We just need the knowledge of what's going on up there, so we can get a better read on what our own existence and where our place in the cosmos is. People, we are living a lie right now. We're living a consumer lie as we go Christmas shopping, and we're unaware of what's going on up there. I think if you looked up to the stars and saw other people up there, and looked at all the stars and thought there's billions and billions of people up there that are around all those stars, it would change the way everybody thinks.
Yeah. I mean, and it would have to change the way people think, like pretty quickly. I think it would. You know what I mean? There would probably be a little, I don't know, lack of a better word. Like if it was just rolled out tomorrow, like, hey, this is what's up. There would be.
Yeah, people are ready.
Yeah, I think people are ready, but there's people that aren't. I think there would be people that would, like, literally, it would, there'd be like some like psychic dissonance, a psychological dissonance.
Oh, there'll be a lot of people but that's with everything. But I think it's a piss poor excuse to say, mankind isn't ready. People will lose their lives.
Oh yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter what you do. If you make any change to the entire world at once, people are going to lose their lives. That's how interconnected we are. People indirectly lost their lives during the pandemic, not from the disease or any vaccine or anything like that. They lost their lives out of circumstance. There were people that died because they couldn't get care, or they couldn't work, and they couldn't get their subsidized money, and they start, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. We have so many people in so many different crevices of life that any change is going to result in those. But I think everybody can handle ETs, and I think deep down inside we already know about it. You know what I mean? It's like we're born kind of thinking about ETs.
Sure. I mean, and it's, prevalent in culture, just, turn on, TV, there's bound to be something on, you know what I mean? Or movies, or, just permeates the culture. And even throughout time, because you look at cave paintings or like old, Sumerian tablets, and they're pointing to the stars, so, like you said, the presence has been around, longer than, the last 5 years of disclosure, but,
well, if you look at the technology, like I'm explaining, like you've taken one day, right? You take it in one night, and they take your consciousness and put it either into a different body or the same body, whoever knows what, cloning, whatever it is. And then you work for 20 years, and then they put you back. And then you look at what does the lore say about the devil? He takes your soul, and then you work in hell. Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's the same story of this technology. They might have been doing this all along, or coming and taking people for that with the same exact technology and using them for slave labor. And I mean, I'm talking about the cavemen, and then they wake up and there's no need back then to erase their memory because they had nothing. They didn't read or write, and they didn't have an internet to talk about it on. So they didn't even bother to erase their memories. They just put them back, and they would have that lore. That's where that lore came from. The devil took me, and I worked in hell. I was stuck in hell for years, for eternity. It felt like eternity. And when you start looking at the world like that, under the assumption that ETs have been here taking advantage of us the whole time. And when I say take advantage, that's not a nefarious thing. We take advantage of the lower life forms as well. So we ride horses, for instance. We eat hamburger. So we don't have any kind of moral compunction about, if that's even a word, compunction. We don't have any moral dilemmas about what we're doing. When that's dreadful. I can't believe they took you and you did that, Tony, for all those time. And then you go and get a chicken sandwich. Well, those chickens were born and lived their life in captivity, and you're now eating them too. So they're a lower life form or less evolved life form, whatever you want to call it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. And we are a lower life form to many ET species. There are ETs that live 500 or 1,000 years. They can they can telepathically communicate with each other. They have radical technology, so it just makes sense that they would exploit indigenous populations of worlds that are not developed.
Yeah. What do you?
Wow, I feel like I'm on a tear with a lot of big words, man.
No, it's fine. No, it's great, man. This is very interesting stuff. Was there any other kind of, like, since you've recovered memories, and I know you said you've been kind of gathering kind of evidence to support, where you've been or your experiences, has there been any, and I know you said you went out to Seattle and kind of confirmed some things about Peru, and was there any other kind of evidence that you've kind of gathered in support of your experiences?
Tons. Well, recently, so the plane in Peru I found. And so in 2017, I remembered that the plane was a C-46 Commando. The guy that took care of me really loved it, the word of it. He saw himself as a freedom fighter and as a commando. And there was a little window, a distinct window in the front of the plane. I remember being able to crawl up and look out of it one time. And so I remembered Commando for the plane. And when I was researching my testimony, I went, oh, God, there it is. It's a C-46 Commando. And I thought I should be able to find a flight record of it, that it belonged to somebody in Peru in those years. And I couldn't. I looked, and it was like, a lot of that stuff is in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. It just was the language barrier, and I couldn't find any evidence of a C-46 Commando in Peru. There were 2 of them, I think, that were decommissioned, and I just gave up on it. But last year, this year, 23, it was sometime early this year, I did an interview for a Spanish audience for Latin America, and there were some people, 2 guys that were pilots in Peruvian pilots. One of them is famous for he was a MiG-22 pilot, and he had a UFO experience, and it's like documented back in the 80s. Anyhow, they wanted to meet me and talk to me, and so there was a translator, and we did a Zoom call. And I was asking, I said, do you guys ever heard of we were talking, and one of them was still active in the Peruvian Air Force. He's an older guy, but he's doing like cargo stuff. He was talking in the Zoom call from the plane. And I said, also on the off chance, I said, do any of you remember a C-46 Commando in the Madre de Dios? And the one guy, Julio, he goes, I think that's Julio was his name. He goes, oh yeah, that was in Pucallpa. He's like, we confiscated that from the narcos in 1990 in the war on drugs. He said, I was flying in the war on drugs, and then we would fly out and blow up the runways, and we confiscated those from Puerto Maldonado, which is only a 10 or 15 minute flight from where I was at in the jungle. And I went, what? He said, oh, it's in Pucallpa. So right in that call, I immediately zoomed in on Google Earth to Pucallpa, and sure enough, there's the plane. So I found the plane that I called it out first and then found the plane. And then one of the guys went there a couple weeks later and got close-up pictures of it. So I haven't been able to – I really need to do some work, get tail numbers and such for that. But there's a lot of evidence still in Peru. And then a couple months later, I went and I filmed it this time with a friend of mine named Tyler Koala. He's got his own podcast. And we went and documented it, and I went to Iñuquern, to where I remember going through this, and I remembered 3 buildings that there was a portable that we were in that was where we slept, and then another portable we'd get up in the morning and go to where we sit in these chairs that hung from the ceiling and be drugged and watch those movies I talked about.
Yeah.
And then there was another small building that the nurse had, and it was vague. I couldn't remember it. And what's in the same spot that I remember now are 3 buildings that are just like sheds, but they're classified as special district. Like it's funny evidence. So we went there, and sure enough, I found the building. They had moved it, the portable that we slept in. It was exactly how I remember it. The film documented me that. And then I found the remains. They burnt the other one. I found the remains of that. And then I found the little campers. There were 2 of them where the nurse's station was. One was the cooler that had our food and everything. And the other was like the first aid area, like a makeshift hospital for us. And so all those buildings are still there. And it was exactly how I remembered it. There was a lot of memories that checked out. So these are things I went on the record saying before I ever went there. It's provable that I've never been to that place in my life. But then I knew details about it that nobody else could know. You know what I mean? Like I knew that, and I documented the whole thing. There'll be a documentary about it later this year, hopefully next year. So that turned out, that was just in this year, but there are many things that keep panning out. Every time I look at something and I go, maybe this is going to prove me wrong, it's like it's the other way around, and it pans out.
And when you go to some of these locations, you know, when you went to Seattle or when you went to the base there, does it bring back more? Do you get like a flood of more memories, or like you know what I mean? Does it ever kind of like spur more?
Absolutely. I remembered a bunch of new stuff, like, you know, conversations, things, memories that are, you know, not, I don't want to say they're worthless, but not memories that are evidence per se, but just standing in the same spot and remembering what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Or, you know, have the conversations with people is what I remember. That's the difference between doing a podcast like this and the book. Is in the book I talked about my relationships with people, and you don't really cover that. You know what I mean? Giving the bullet points in in an interview form.
Sure. Yeah.
But those are the memories that come. You know, it's conversations I had, things that happened. I remembered a great deal more about Indian Current when I was standing there, and I was panicked. I was in a panic when I was there. It was terrifying to go there and find out that it was all real. And because I was tortured, you know, we were tortured. We were kids. And to think that was real, like in the back of my mind, I'm always hoping that the other shoe will drop and there'll be some good reason that I remember it and for the way I do, and it's not real, but it keeps being real. And so you know what I mean? There's a whole new realization every time that happens. Like, fuck, this happened to me. This is real.
It's got to be a little bit bittersweet because it's vindication of your memory. Like, look, I'm not crazy. This is right. This is here. But then it's like, oh shit, this is real. Like that really happened to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's exactly the feeling, and it's surreal. And the thing is, you know, like I said, I was only gone overnight, so I have the same amount of time in my life that I always had a family that can vouch for me, that I never went to these places. So I have those memories too.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, like, you know, your family, like when you started getting these memories back, like how did they react to it? You know, like, like your parents or other immediate family, like, you know, cause it's gotta be a lot for someone to take in and, you know,
a lot of people in my family don't believe it, and they don't believe in aliens. They don't believe in anything the news doesn't tell them. And so they're normies. They're normal people. A lot of people are supportive and do believe it. My kids been very supportive about it. My mom and my sister, and my brother, but other members of my family don't. And so, you know, that's the reality of it. And like I said, if you hear this for the first time and you are not skeptical, that'd be weird. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I totally get it. I expect it. I'm not trying to talk you into something. Right. So, but it is what it is. You have the right to not, there's plenty of people that hate me. I get hate. I get the hate mail too. And I don't get, at some time, you know, on a human level, you get hurt, but really people have every right to not like me. You know what I'm saying? You're not doing anything wrong by writing me and saying you don't like me. You know, there's a line to cross where it is, but I don't hold that against people because that's your right.
Sure.
Plenty of people have been very supportive of me too. So I don't take it too much. It just comes with the territory. And I'm saying things that in order to believe me, you must unbelieve something you already do believe
Yeah.
for most people. And so I get that. And, it is what it is. But my immediate family has been supportive.
Good. That's going to be such a weird thing, though. Like to get hate mail, like why someone really,
Oh, yeah.
someone went out of their way to do that. Like, all right, if you don't believe it, just keep it moving, right? Like, there's no reason to like get riled up about it.
That's exactly how I feel. If I don't like something, if I'm listening to something or watching a video and I don't like it, I just turn it off.
Yeah, that's all you got to do.
You know what I mean? I've got too many good things to do in my life. But apparently, there's a lot of people out there. At one point, there was I don't know about the language. You can curse on your show.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
there was
it's fully open. Don't worry about that.
There was a fuck Tony Rodrigues YouTube channel. So somebody made a YouTube and was putting out. Of course, he was totally anonymous. Like the people that are really aggressively skeptical always have to hide behind something. They never come out face to face and say that stuff. But totally anonymous, and then take shots at you. And even other whistleblowers have attacked me. Even other people that are saying essentially the same thing that I'm saying have attacked me. And so, it is what it is, man. I put this out here. I would have never finished the book if they didn't start deleting my interviews back in 2020. Like 300 interviews I had links for on a webpage that I had done. And some of them 2 hours, 3 hours long. So that's quite a bit of work it took in a long time. And then they just started getting deleted, taken down. And I went, oh God. And so we rushed and got the book out, and the book has had a life. It was a bestseller for 6 weeks, and it still is selling. It's a popular book, even though it's not rated PG. I'll warn everybody right now. The book is very dark, and a lot of people say they can't finish it. The first half of it, when I was a kid being tortured, I covered that in detail, and it's not for everybody to read. I'd say that.
No. Now, has there been any kind of have you been, I don't know, like, when your videos were taken down, was that like mysterious, or was that just like YouTube or one of the other companies saying, oh, these violate something or other and they come down?
No, totally mysterious. There was no rhyme or reason. It was just, they started disappearing.
Yeah.
And was no note. Like they were for other people. So there was never my channel.
Sure.
I had a few things. So I did have a Vimeo. I have a Patreon show. And that's where I do right now. I teach remote viewing and I teach remote influencing, things that I learned in Inyukern from that research facility. When I researched it, I really found a great deal about the documentation and the early ways on how they do remote viewing. So I teach it. I've been very successful class. So in there, some of my videos got deleted, but it was always we were talking about the hot button stuff, the election and the pandemic. So those videos, the videos where I was specific about talking about that back as it was happening, I was getting videos taken down back then. Yeah. But I went behind the paywall because it cut out all the trolls and it justified the time I put into this, man. I've given at least minimum every Saturday for the last 8 years. And most of my week nowadays is talking about this on podcasts like yours and in my own show and doing these groups. So, a $5 paywall is minor.
Sure. Yeah. Have you and definitely we'll get links to everything, and I'll have that all in the show notes too for people to check out. Like if you're driving and you don't have to remember it, just go check out the show notes later, and there'll be links to everything to get in touch with Tony and all the stuff he has going on. But have you been contacted by any kind of like agency or like representatives of any of these programs or anything and been told to like shut up or like, hey, you might not want to talk about this stuff? Or has there been any kind of blowback like that?
No, I haven't been told to shut up about it. I have been contacted by people that you wouldn't believe. I have been contacted by some things that were hard to believe and but real nonetheless, like organizations that are out there. But for the most part, they've let me be. And I've been told that my book is that people in the programs read my book, that people in the Pentagon and in Area 50, in these research programs and people high up in the Navy, like aircraft carriers, that my book is in the upper military and in the black world, that my book is well known. So I've been told that.
Yeah, I mean, and so, I know you have some coursework where you help people who might have been through similar circumstances.
Yeah.
And how has that been a pretty successful thing for you? And has it been helping people?
Well, what I do is I look for common denominators from what I remembered and from what other people say. And so when people are telling me their own experiences, I'm looking for things that they're not aware of that others have said. And that's kind of, gives me some proof to work with. And then I just try to give people, point them in a direction. What happened was when I first went public, I was getting, a few emails here and there, but it really went berserk at some point. And I had a few people that scheduled to talk to me and were abusive, angry. Yeah. And so that went behind a paywall. And that eats a lot of my time. You know what I mean? I'm not all about making money doing that because I don't advertise or anything, but, I put $100 on the paywall there, and I still get a few a week, 2 or 3 a week. There are people that when they see an interview, they go, "Man, I've been through that too. I need to talk to him." Yeah. And so there's some people that are just like, I don't want to say possessed, but they're just like very obsessed with, they must talk to me about it and get it off their chest. There's a real the kindred. And I mean, by best counts, I'm over 2,500 people that I've spoken to in the years. Not all for money.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I was just everybody that got a hold of me, I would talk to them. I'd set up time, and then it really started eating into my life. And sure. I had to have something that kind of filtered that. So yeah, I do that. And then I came up with a memory course. So that's the other thing, is that people go, I remember a little bit. I don't remember as much as you, Tony, but I do remember a little bit. It's real. I went through it. How do I get more memories? And in the beginning, I was on a show, and the guy goes, "Well, how'd you brush your teeth?" Up there. He said, "Who cut your hair?" And at the time I was like, man, I should know that. But off the top of my head, I said, off the top of my head, I can't think of it, man. I'm sorry. And over the next couple of months, I thought, if this is real, I should be able to remember brushing my teeth in the morning. And I started going, like, I've got rosemary.
But in all fairness, right? Like, I don't remember brushing my teeth three weeks ago. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
right.
That's such a mundane thing. Like, you don't store that, like this.
But when you're talking to a skeptic, man, when you're talking to somebody that doesn't want what you're saying to be true, they're going to pick every little bit. And I'm always very defensive about it. Sure. Like, I realize that I'm going to get grilled, all the time. So, and I thought to myself, I should be able to remember this. And I made a memory exercise. I stumbled across some memory exercises, and I went, oh God, it was disposable. The toothbrushes were in this clear plastic bag. They were disposable. You had to rip it out of the bag and throw that away, and then brush your teeth and throw that away, and they would get recycled. The whole thing was recyclable. And I got those memories back, and I went, oh God. And then the hair cutting was, when you went in and out of the barracks, you had to shower to leave, and you had to shower to come back in. And if your hair was long, the ladies at the desk would send you to get your hair cut immediately by a guy. And that memory, those exercises, I put into a memory course. It's like $40, and I don't make any money off that, but it's like $40, and it's on somebody else's Teachable, and it's like an hour or 2 hours. I forget. It's been so long, but it tells you how to do those exercises, and it works for any long-term memory, not just being an abduction.
Sure.
But if you want to remember more about what you were doing when you were 15, you can use the same exercises and expand on a vague memory that you already have. You can expand it and get more out of it. So that's an exercise thing that I did. That's on the website. Everything's on TonyRodrigues.com. There's a link to it.
Yep.
But recently, just only in the last 6 months or so, I've been doing the remote viewing group, and it's been pretty amazing. We're not doing it super seriously. Like, people aren't doing remote viewing for 8-hour sessions kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're just doing it really quick, haphazardly, hour once a week, plus the meetings. And then we're getting absolutely stellar results. People are literally drawing pictures of the targets. It's amazing just to see. Everybody can do it. And I keep researching new ways to do it. And in fact, that's what I'm doing after this. I have a remote viewing class meeting.
Okay.
After this.
Yeah. And I know you got to go to that, but like a last question, what do you think is like, because the reason why I was asking about like you talking to people and kind of helping other people with this stuff, like how big is this, do you think? Like, is it like the 20 and back piece. You know what I mean? Like how many people, are getting taken and done through this? And is it only people from Earth, or are they taking people from other planets, or beings from other worlds and doing the same thing? Like
my interpretation was that it's all the species, other species do it too.
Yeah.
It's life extension. It's adding another 20 years to your life, or 40. Some people have the genetic, and it's genetically, there's a genetic marker that not all of us have. Not everybody can do it. So I came up with a number, conservative number, maybe 50 million, 70 million people globally have been taken in this program. I did the math on the size of the building, and with 4 ETs in the room that did 2 or 3 guys a day. I did the math around the clock, and it was like, 50 million people over the last 10, 20 years would it be easy for them to take. And when you talk about 20 years of labor from any of those people, that's a significant financial value,
Sure.
But it's a big thing, man. I mean, like I said, I think most people would say yes if they were offered it. They say, you're going to work. We're going to give you 3 hot in the cot, and we're not going to pay you anything, but you're going to live on a spaceship. And then we're going to bring you back, and you're going to wake up tomorrow, and you'll have lived 20 extra years, and then you'll live the rest of your life out. You'll be healthy. What do you think of that? Will you do that? And I think most people would.
Yeah. And are they only going after like taking children, or is it people from is it, you know what I mean? Is it like a certain age range that they
Yeah, well, they definitely, logically, it's easier to take a child and then train it to do what you want.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to take somebody that's 50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So it makes perfect sense. I find that I found from all the people that I work with that women tend to get taken right around the age of 12. They'll be taken before that for short stints, like taken for a week and put back the same minute, and then taken again, or take it, like weird things will happen. But at 12 years old, they'll go. And boys, it's all over the place. 8 years old, 7 years old, 17 years old. The boys are a different story. For some reason, girls tend to go around 12.
And just and I don't know if this ties into the guy with the Illuminati guy or whatever, but like, do you think, like, it's strange, you got taken and you got brought to a place where you got kind of programmed, and then you didn't end up going into space, when the aliens that took you, that's what they said was going to happen, for a while. Instead, you were on Earth, and you were basically, sold and tortured, you know what I mean? Like further, like, do you think that was part of like punishment from that dude, or, because otherwise, do you think they just would have taken you and you would have went and did the space stuff? Like,
yeah.
Do you know?
No,
what I'm
absolutely.
saying?
No, absolutely. I think that I think that's why I remember, because I wasn't groomed for it. I wasn't chosen for it or ideal for the program. So I wasn't the typical person that was put into it. And I think that's why I got my memories back, for one. And for two, it was absolutely a punishment by him. Yeah. It was a punishment. And, it's not rare. I've heard it from other people. It's like the same thing. They punish people that have, so, and I said this, I think the other day in a live Zoom for, how long could you have that authority before you abused it?
Yeah.
How long before any of us, anybody listening, and everybody likes to say that they're righteous, but if you did this day in and day out for 10 or 15 years, if you had the ability to take anybody out of your day-to-day life on Earth and put them in a program and to do whatever you want to them for a few minutes before they go off to their work assignment, and then they would never remember it, and they would wake up the next day with no memory of it, so no harm, no foul. Like, how long would it be before somebody that cut you off in traffic and pissed you off? Or how long would it be before some kid that picked on your kid, or somebody that you had a disagreement with, how long would it be before they ended up in a shitty job up there because you're the guy that makes the choice, right? Or a beautiful girl or a beautiful guy, whatever, a love interest. How long before they got taken, right? And you had your way with them, and then they went on about their way. So, and then on top of that, to have ETs come and say, look, we're going to give you this super technology, but we need slaves. We need 100 people that we're going to do experiments on. 100. and we'll give them back in 20 years, but they're going to be raped and beaten and hard labor. But we're going to make all of your spaceships 10% more efficient.
Yeah.
Like that's really what's going on. And so that's why it's a secret, because they're breaking the law, and they have bases on the moon. So it's their own jurisdiction. So you get what I mean? When they take you to the moon, there's no breaking the law there, because there is no law there. They're not even in the United States anymore. They're not even in the world anymore.
Yeah, you're not subject to the same law. Yeah.
Yeah. So the more out. So when you start looking at the possibilities of this stuff existing, and you start peeling it back, the reason to keep it secret just keeps presenting itself. Like that's the secrecy. But they've gotten too far away from it. We're to the point where we're stunted right now. Like we need to, we need to participate. Like the average everyday, we're getting to the point where they can't keep it a secret no more.
Yeah.
We're getting advanced enough where guys we're 3D printing now. So pretty soon guys will be able to roll out of their garage a telescope that can find life on other planets. Our technology is getting to the point where they have to either get rid of it, put us back in the Stone Ages, or come clean on it.
Yeah. And I know there's I can't remember what the date is, like 2027 or something as a year that keeps getting thrown around, where there's going to be this full disclosure and I don't know, is that something you heard of? Like, I forgot what the exact year is. It was like 2027.
I've been hoping for disclosure for every year since I got my memories back, and saying, "Oh, it's coming up. Something's coming."
Well, that's going to be a vindication for you if there is, right? Like, there's going to be
definitely. Well, I'm sure that they'll present new experts. Like, I'm sure they'll try to steamroll right over guys like me. But I think we're going to get some major developments in 24. I think this year has all the ingredients to be a very progressive year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I think 24 is going to be 27. That makes sense. We'll see. Maybe they're waiting on us to get back to the moon. And maybe that's a finish line. Maybe that's why the United States had to get to the moon, so that they could cross a finish line and join that community. Say, now they're multi-worlded. They joined that interstellar community, and then it was all, we could go into the moon. There's nothing up there. Don't look at us. Look the other way.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's when the United States got involved. Is maybe that's the finish line is going to the moon. So if the public gets to the moon, then we're all participate.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I'm just thinking out loud at this point.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, there's all that weirdness with the moon stuff, like with when you hear different interviews with Buzz Aldrin, or like the different transmissions where they're like, oh, they're watching us. And it's like, oh, who's?
Oh, yeah. There is a Santa Claus. Right. Be advised, there is a Santa Claus. Like they came back and they literally said that around the backside. So, yeah.
Yeah, so there was a lot of weirdness there. So, one other, like, I know you got to go because you got that other meeting. But a quick question: so you were gone for 20 years, and you came back, and it was the next day. And did you ever see that kid again? The kid that set this all off for you, and like, what was?
Absolutely, I went to school. I went to school. It was, I think we had the break. It was a couple of weeks later. I think we had that following like Easter break or something.
Okay.
But it was a few weeks later, and he changed his whole attitude. And there were other kids in the school that were saying weird stuff. Like, was that real? The one kid walked up to us and said, "Was that real? I remember it. I remember everything." He's like, "Yeah, we'll talk." And then he was different to me. He wasn't mean to me anymore, after that. And he asked me if I was okay. I went to school and had amnesia. I forgot my way around the school because it had been so long.
Yeah.
For me, I had forgotten it. And, but yeah, his entire demeanor changed. We never became friends, but he kind of let up on me, on hating me.
Sure.
Because he knew.
Yeah. And so coming back, like, did like you said, when you had to kind of learn your way around the school, were your parents concerned? Like, was there anything, like, did they think something happened to you? Like,
oh, they just brushed it off. My teacher called my mom and said that I had amnesia and that I should get checked out. And, my mom just kind of blew it off. I was okay. She's like, "Are you okay?" I was, "Yeah, no, I'm fine."
Yeah.
That's all. I just went along with that, and that's how it was.
What do you think happened with the MRI that like, is there any science around MRI triggering, memories and stuff?
I really don't know if that's what did it or not, but the reason I remember it is I got my memories back, I saw the Randy Kramer interview where he explained the time dilation, and then I got my memories back. And for the next year, I got grilled by researchers, really. But then about a year and a half later, I looked and I found something called the Mars Records. Michael Reif and another guy, and they wrote a book called the Mars Records. And he goes, well, one guy was using kinesiology, like muscle testing, like a machine. And that's how he got his memories back. But the other guy got an MRI of a scan of his head, and he got his memories back of working on Mars for 20 years. And this was like in the 90s or early 2000s when they came out. And I went, well, that's weird because I got an MRI. And when was that? And I logged on to my medical history website, my medical insurance. And I looked up the date, and sure enough, it was about 10 days before I started emailing people with the memories.
Yeah.
So, like it might be a coincidence, but I always mention it because he did it and I did it and it worked. You know what I mean? I got my memories back. So there may be more than a coincidence there, but was that the reason why? I don't know for sure.
Okay. But it was just happenstance that it was, just a couple weeks before.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you got to run, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on. I'd love to talk to you again sometime. And so if people can find you at TonyRodrigues.com. I will put that on the show notes. And I know your book is available on Amazon. It's on Amazon. There's a link to both books. I have Series Colony Cavalier and Project Star Maker are the two books out right now. Project Star Maker is like a companion to the first book. Yep. And
they're on Amazon, but you can find them on the website as well.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up? I usually don't get off this hastily, but I know I'm trying to give you some time before that meeting.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for working me in the schedule like you did. You did a great job.
No problem.
No, thanks. Just, we're all in for times to get even weirder than they have been, and just try to be positive about it. Anybody if you want to have any discussion, anybody can email me through the website, TonyRodrigues.com. Tony Rodrigues with an S. And all the links to everything else is on there too. The Patreon is where the remote viewing happens and the Tier 3 happens. And so all that stuff is there. So I just very honored to be here and be able to tell my story. So thank you.
No, I'm honored to have you on, man. Thank you. I'm going to shut this off, but I'm not hanging up. Hold on one second.
If you're in business, you probably have a website, but can your site handle your growth? How many visitors before your site slows down or crashes? What about storage and data security? From web hosting to virtual servers, Pair Networks provides the online infrastructure you need to start, grow, and flourish. When it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. No frustrating chatbots or sitting on hold for hours. Check out pair.com today to learn more. That's PAIR.com.